Hi, Catherine. Thank you for joining me on the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm really good. How you doing? Good.
I'm
I
fine.
just love your accent. I'm sorry. I absolutely love your accent.
Thank you. Sometimes an English accent can be hard to understand, so
I know, but it's so awesome. I just went up for a role. I have an agent in London, and I just went up for a role to play a woman from the North and Manchester, I guess. And it's really not an easy. It's not that easy of an accent to master. It's kind of great. It's fun, and what you're doing is it's so forward. The speech is so. It's like really. It's like New Yorkers were very sort of speech forward, aggressive speech forward, but it's got all this lyricism to it. It's so fun. I love it so much.
have you heard the Scouse accent? Because that's the hardest to understand.
No, do that one for me.
Oh, I can't do accents. What was you in the north of England for then? Was it for a film or?
TV show. I can't say which one, but it was for a TV show that was, I guess it's going to start filming pretty soon. I did not get it, which,
Oh,
but next one. And I have a friend who's from the North. She is from the village that Little John is buried in, which, for I know maybe she tells me that people in the UK don't really think Robin Hood was, whatever. But Americans, we love Robin Hood. And I just think it's really awesome to be from the village that Little John is buried in. I think that's incredibly fab. I'm a total fan of that. So anyway. And then how tall was Little John anyway, right? He was like
well, you mentioned before New York. That's where you're from. What was your childhood like in New York?
I grew up at a time, I don't know what it's like now for you guys, but in the US now, like kids are really like it's really like a helicopter parent thing. And when I grew up, it was, you get home from school, you take your uniform off, you put some jeans on, and then you go out and you come back at like 7 o'clock. And nobody really asks you where you went, what you did, how's it going. You just run around with gaggles of young people your age. And, I remember I sort of a terrible story. We were playing ball and I threw the ball up against a building and instead I broke a window. And it was literally, I'm kid you not. I was really athletic when I was young, unlike now, but I tried. But I think it was like a third or fourth story window that I broke with this ball. And, everybody else ran and the boys all ran, because they knew they were going to be accused. And when they came down to find the culprit, I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm just a girl. So, I mean, I could not have thrown that to like that far, obviously, because I am just a girl. But if I see the culprit, I mean, I didn't know them, but if I see them, I'm going to let you know. And I just stood there, you know. And New York it was just a more it was like a lot of little neighborhoods. It wasn't so much now in some ways it feels like a conglomerate. I feel in some ways like I live in a corporation. I feel like I live in a corporation now that I live in the US anyway. I feel like I'm part of or some corporate structure. I'm a bean counter in the corporate structure. But uh back then, I mean, not to romanticize it, but we were climbing roofs and climbing through back alleys and, we were ringing doctors' doorbells and running away, laughing wildly. I mean, stupid stuff, right? But it was kind of like the mountain was ours. We were very free. And New York was really pretty safe at that time. I mean, I know everybody thinks New York has never, ever been safe, but I have never had a problem in the city. And I've lived here my whole life and I have lived in every neighborhood. And, I have lived in most of the neighborhoods before they were neighborhoods because, starting out as an actor, I was poor. I was so broke. So, I mean, I lived in really alternative neighborhoods. Now they're chic, but then they weren't. And I never, I think New York if you're doing your own thing, you're pretty good to go here. And yeah, occasionally there's some aberrant thing that happens, but New York, I think, is actually one of the safest places on the planet. That's just my opinion, you know. So statistically speaking.
Yeah. Well, did you always want to be an actress and a performer?
Um, I got into it sort of like by default because my dad he had a terminal illness when I was in high school, and my mother didn't want me at the hospital all the time. So she heard about this children's professional theater company and she signed me up. And then I just started doing it. And I think I was vastly untalented. But it was really fun and it became a second family. It became the family that I was losing. And, you know, um, I think that's why I stuck with it because it, you know, I love the players, I love the play, I love the community, I love the people in it. I love going to set. I love watching theater. I just for me it is a pulsing, vibrating uh way of being that existentially is completely perfect and utopian, except for the fact that, there's no job security and that's a constant worry, really. But other than that, it's great.
Did you enjoy theatre then in the early days when you was performing on stage?
Yeah, I did. I loved it. I did theater for like 20 years. I don't really do much theater now. I'm doing a piece, Pen Pals, the 26th through the 29th. That's a rotating piece that two women rotate in and out of. And it's a really fantastic cast of women who are rotating. Some of the best actresses in New York that I know of. I mean, I'm impressed. I don't know if you'd consider me among them, but I'm impressed, and I'm psyched to do it. So, I'm doing that, but basically I really just do film and TV. But I did love theater. I do love theater. I do love going to the theater. I think, especially right now, any live anything, whether it's at a library or a community playhouse or a regional theater or a Broadway house or off Broadway, whether it's a concert, whether whatever it is, I think anything that's live that we go to, a movie, sitting at a movie theater, sitting in the dark with a group of people is an enormously healing and powerful thing to do because you really gain the information sort of like metabolically that we're all laughing at the same time. We're all everybody gasps at the same time. Everybody pauses and wait. Everybody's on the edge of their seat. And the thrill of that is I think it's really like I think live theater is like hugging a bear, a bear that hugs you back, or hugging a wonderful, you know, golden retriever. I think anything live in which you are sitting amongst the rest of us is so good. It's so good. And I think it's the one of the things that AI can never replace, you
Yeah,
know?
definitely.
I mean, AI might replace us, but it's not going to.
Do you feel that when you're on stage then, that kind of power in a way?
Yeah, I feel incredible connection. I feel that incredible connection when I'm on stage with an audience because you start to breathe as one, you start to, if you can, it, you know, I think sometimes there's such great directors out there that really mine the depth of the script so that the script really becomes a one with all, and uh, incredibly accessible. Um, the through line emotionally, psychically, metabolically. And once the audience starts to get into it, I think really everybody starts to breathe at the same time. And, I'm just standing in for the audience, and it's an incredibly powerful, potent, uh, wonderful thing. And I think that's why we all love it.
Well, when you went into film and TV, did you feel a big shift from the theatre to film and television? Did it feel a
I
big step
did.
up?
I did. I really did. I really, really, really did. It was initially it was really terrifying because um the first show I did wasn't really terrifying. It was Naked Brothers Band. It was a Saturday night preteen show, and it was wacky and fun and wonderful. And it was so kind of ecstatic and abstract and bizarre and ridiculous that there was nothing you could do that was wrong. I once went up to the creative and I said, like, listen, I'm from the theater. If I'm too big, I can pull it back. I can, just let me know. And she goes, there is no too big on this show. And so that was very liberating. I felt very comfortable. But then, I went on to do more, I guess, high type, you know, TV. And that was really being crafted by some of the greats in the industry. And I think they really did want a more subtle performance. And um, I did feel very intimidated by that. I was like, I think I'm really pretty good actor, but I hope that I hope what I'm giving you is okay for the camera, because the camera is a very intimate being. The camera is an organism. It's an actual, like, it responds. It loves certain things. It loves certain faces. It loves certain movements. It catches so much more than you think. It's almost like, so I have a lot of dogs, and sometimes I'll look at one of my dogs and my dog will be like, I am looking at you, but I don't know if I'm interested. And, I think to myself, okay, that was really sophisticated. And it was just a millisecond of information, but it was information. And that is the same thing that the camera will do. The camera can pick up, and I think that's what we love. The camera can pick up that millisecond of somebody staring off into space, having a thought, and we all want to know what that thought is. And it was just a millisecond. So I think the camera is I think it's why I love doing it so much right now, and why I love living in the camera world right now, is because I find it unendingly challenging, and I am always humbled by it. And I'm 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 always in awe of it, and I'm always excited by it. And so, and unlike the theater, on film, your first performance is your tech, which is your, rehearsal, which is the first time you're meeting the people sometimes that you're working with, which is the first conversation you might be having with anybody on the creative team, which is all of these things. And you're stepping up to the plate and trying to deliver a home run, with actually, like, a completely open, fluid, untethered, unpaved uh, path. You're creating a path through which a story is flowing. You're creating that path with the other people that you are in this team sport with. You're creating it in that moment now, and that moment will not happen after this scene is wrapped. That moment is then gone. A few hours later, this moment will live on screen forever, and it will never be revisited. So I think that's terrifying. I love it.
You're glad you learnt your craft through theatre first before going into
Yeah,
television.
yeah. Well, I think I learned my love of the power of this art form through the theater. And I also think that what the theater taught me very much, it really grounded me in what I know to be as truth, have artistic integrity, have artistic truth, what I know of as the responsibility of the actor to the story, to your fellow actors, to the creatives. That came from the discipline of the theater, because the theater world is a very disciplined world, And I don't know if people really get that. People are like, oh my gosh, you work like 3 hours a day. What a great job. And that is so not true. You live and breathe that performance that you're going to give that night. You live and breathe it with every second of that day that you wake up, you think about it. You go to the gym, you think about it. You walk down the street, you think about it. You eat your dinner, you think about it. On the way to the theater, you think about it. Um, you have to live like a nun because you're performing live. So they expect really the best out of your physical, mental, and emotional instrument. You can't be going out, at least I could never go out the a night after a show and expect that, I wasn't, going to have to really get it together the next day to clean it up. And I rarely, when I do theater, I rarely do anything but that play. I mean, I'm like a hermit. I live like a hermit. I don't go out, and because everything, all energetic focus has to go toward that event that night, and so, you can't get into like a road rage fight, because that will affect your performance. It's like opera singers are even more disciplined from the ones that I've spoken to, because the voice is a very reactive instrument. And opera singers, before they do a performance in the evening, they won't go outside, a lot of them, because they don't want anything to affect their voice. They don't want any, when we meet somebody on the street that, like, maybe we really we're like, I just can't meet you right now. I'm sorry. I can't. But what you do because you're civilized is you go, hi, nice to see you. And then your voice goes up and you get really pleasant and you get really friendly and maybe you get a little fake. And then you meet them and then you walk on and then your breathing has changed and your metabolic rate has changed and your thoughts have drifted. And, maybe that's okay for an actor. Sometimes that can be very useful. But sometimes, especially I think in opera, they don't want any changes. That the great opera singers and I think a lot of the great actors, they literally do nothing else but what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Do you miss the instant like gratification of an audience then when you're on set compared to a theatre?
I miss not the gratification. I miss the connection. I
Yeah.
miss I miss the channel being so it's like so full. Um, but what I find in film and TV is, in the absence of that channel, you have to create completely through your imagination, completely without the sort of like, aide de guerre of audiences laughing or whatever, sighing or whatever. You have to like bring it all. And I find that to be really, really interesting, really challenging, and really an intimate connection with, you know, the material, the actors, the art of filmmaking, the art of creating on camera. I think is a very it's a very interesting proposition, and it it requires uh, uh, so much skill, and I love I love understanding that skill,
Yeah,
trying to understand it.
you've played a lot of well-known roles in brilliant series and films. So I just want to start off with Stranger Things, really. How did that come about, you getting the role in the second series?
You know what? I just auditioned, but I had been through a lot of I had been through a whole spate of auditions. I remember where I wasn't getting cast. and I was just like very blue. And I was also just fed up. And my son he was young, and there was a Halloween party at his school. And he was young, so the Halloween party was like 8:30 in the morning. And so I went, and there was a face painter, and I had her paint my face, a cat on my face. And then I went to the audition with the face paint. I had the face paint on because it was a Halloween episode that I auditioned for. And I thought, you know what? Like, you know what I look like. And it's a Halloween episode. So I think this character would have this face paint on. And I bet I'm the only person who's taken the risk of putting face paint on for their audition. Bet I am. So yeah, check it out. And I think, sometimes when you do these really ballsy, crazy things, out of the box things that are kind of like, I don't know, guys, nobody's casting me. Like, what do I do? What do I paint my face as for you to freaking gas me? I think sometimes the creatives are like, okay, that's the one right there. Yeah. She's, you know, she's a panic. Let's get her.
What do you think about auditions and stuff? Do you not like doing them, or do you enjoy them?
I hate them. I hate
Yeah, I
them.
can
I
imagine.
do. You know, I love to work, and thank goodness gracious, I get a fair amount of offers. And so I sort of bop around from offer to offer. And I'm very, very, very grateful. Um, but I do audition still quite a bit. I do quite a few self tapes. And, the problem is that my reading of it could be completely different than your reading of it, but this is my reading of it and you're not there. And here I am alone in my apartment, doing my little self tape. Like, it's ridiculous. It's absurd. And I don't know that auditions really serve or help or do anything for anybody. Um, I'm really not sure if that works, but it is what it is. I guess it's the devil we live with. But I'm not like, it's funny, I guess maybe it wasn't the right profession considering I don't like auditioning, but and I don't think I'm really that good of an auditioner, unless I'm wearing cat face makeup, and then I'm very liberated. But so it's funny I chose this profession, or this profession chose me. But I mean, I'm not. I think there are people who love to audition, and I'm always fascinated by them. But I don't. But I also don't love to compete. Like, I don't love competition. I dislike competition. I'm like, oh my God, this is so sad. We're all competing. Everybody should win. This is not nice. I just don't like it. And I remember when we used to do auditions in person, I'd sit next to this girl who I'm auditioning against, and she'd have this horrible story about what was going on in her life. And I'd be like, oh, wow, I hope they give you the role, because and then I'd go in there and it'd be like, you should give her the role because she's really having a bad day. And I'm fine. All right, I got to see you later. Bye. Like, I'm just not it. I'm not good at it. I'm not a competitive person. And I don't know, and the whole idea, like, being picked, like when I was a kid, how you play like dodgeball or volleyball, or any of these games that kids pick each other to be on their teams. I was never picked. All right. And I never thought I would be picked. I never expected to be picked. And then I go into a profession where I'm like, I have to be picked. I'm like, this is really, it's totally ridiculous, So yeah, I don't know how that happened.
Well, you obviously got the role in Stranger Things. What were the Duffer Brothers like to work with?
Nicest people you'd ever want to meet. Nicest people you would ever want to meet. The first day I worked for them, I was standing in the middle of this set. They were setting everything up. And I'm just standing there. I'm like, ba, 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 ba. I'm all dressed. My hair and makeup is done. I'm waiting for everybody to get here. They're coming from, they had been shooting something else. They're all arriving onto this set. They go from set to set. And I'm just standing there. And these two people come up to me and they're like, hey. And I'm like, oh, hey, hey. And they're like, how's it going? And I'm like, oh, it's good. Everything is good. Good. How's it going for you? And they're like, oh, it's good. It's good. And they're like, well, oh, we're the Duffer Brothers. And I'm like, okay. Well, I'm Kathy, you know? And that was pretty much they're no ego, no ego drama, kind, gentle, caring, giving. Um, they really, really are exceptional human beings. That's what I would say about them. Creatively, and just from a point of view of like somebody in the world who you would say is a nice person. They're nice people. And I like nice people. In fact, I only want to work with nice people. That's my new bottom line. This this writer or director came up to me recently and she was like, what part do you want to play? What do you want to do? What do you want to act in? She's like, I want to find something for you. And I'm like, well, I really like you. I think you're a really nice person. And that's enough for me. So whatever you find, I'm there. Because like for me, it's really all about, am I working with nice people? Because, art is art. I want to make art, but I'm like, nobody sets out to make bad art. Like there's no artist that sets out to, oh, I'm going to make some bad art today. Like nobody does that. So everybody wants to make something really interesting and creative. And I love that. And I love being on a journey with people as they try to do things. Not all art succeeds, and art must have the right to fail. But, you know, my bottom line is I just want to work with nice people. That's it. That's where I am now. That's where it's gotten to.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at things though, because it'll bring out the best in you as well, won't it?
Yeah, yeah, and the best in the room. And I think the best in the room brings out the best on the camera. I just do. I believe that. I just believe that nastiness gets you nowhere, and it's gross and it's weird. And I don't necessarily, and I don't think it's necessary in any workplace, you know? So,
Well, over here in England, it seems like after every series, Stranger Things just gets bigger and bigger. Was there a moment when you knew it was like a huge series over in America?
um, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I live in New York and there are so many, like a lot of movie stars live here, like big A-listers, because they get left alone. Like literally, you go to a coffee shop and there is so and so sitting there and they're having coffee. And New York is like, just give me my caffeine. I don't, I don't really care who's sitting there. And so people are left alone. So, there's so many wonderful shows that are happening. There's so many. I think of all of the things on the planet right now that are succeeding, I think I feel, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel that the arts are in a very positive place. And there's a lot of wonderful creators. There's a lot of wonderful creation going on, Stranger Things being among them. And so I don't really see that as one thing over another. I go to a lot of film festivals. I love independent films. I love new voices in the field. And so I don't really judge or place necessarily one thing above another. I'm glad for the success of all that is art. And I think that for me, I think part of the reason Stranger Things is successful is because, I mean, I'm sure there are people who would scoff at this, whatever, but I think it is a pretty high art. I think it takes the art to a pretty high level of of possibility within the art, within the heart and soul and storytelling and special effects and creativity and good versus evil, and stories that we want to have given to us in the dark in our living rooms. I think Stranger Things gives us all that. So I think it's an incredibly, I think it's a piece of high art. I really believe that. And I think that perhaps that's why it is successful, you know?
Well, you played Dustin's mum in the series. Uh,
Yeah.
what's it been like seeing like these kids' journeys throughout the series and stuff? Because there was only young really when they started, wasn't there?
Yeah. And I got to tell you, they're the nicest kids I've ever met. I mean, I got to, and I'm not just saying that, I got to tell you, like to a fault, they come up to me. You know, I'm not I'm a cog in the wheel. And to a fault, every single one of them comes up to me. Hi, how are you, Kathy? How is your son? How's his college? How's the city? Have you had any good pizza lately? You know, like literally, like just good people. Every single one of these young people on that show is just a fine human being. And you don't always find that with young people because, you know, I've done a few things. And sometimes, as with any human being, you can drink the Kool-Aid. And somebody tells you, you know, when you're 7 years old, that, you know, you are it. You are humanity's answer to the stars, the moon, and the sun. You know, you believe it. And, you know, you become a little shit. And, I think that that is human. And I've seen that happen, but that is not the case here. These these young people, to a fault, are all incredibly together, gentle, kind, respectful, generous, courteous. I'm like, wow, who is your mother? Where I need to speak to your mother. I need to speak to all of your mothers and your fathers because you are raising the nicest kids on planet Earth. And I hope my son, you know, people tell me when they meet my son on the street that he is the same. So I hope I'm doing as good a job. But I'm very, very impressed by these people, very impressed by these young people, you
Yeah,
know,
that's
and
good.
that's not easy, right? I don't think it's easy. I don't think it's any light thing to be that well known and to remain that kind and courteous and gentle and and giving and caring. Remarkable. To me, that is remarkable. And there's no talk of like, oh, I'm so and so or such and such, or I've been so and so. None of that crap, you know, none of it. They're just really good people.
Yeah,
So I
that's
can't, you know,
good to hear.
I can't say enough about the level of people on that show. Like fine human beings, fine human beings.
Yeah, well, have you got any favorite memories on set of Stranger Things?
Well, I mean, you know, I love their cameras, right? They have a lot of money because they're a very successful show. So they have a lot of toys. And I think Netflix, it's a big show for Netflix. So I think Netflix, you know, pretty much gives them whatever toys they want. And the cameras on that show, the way they use those cameras, it's like Lord of the Rings, you know what I mean? It's like these cameras are flying, they're just flying, and they're like there's your camera, it's coming by, it's coming by, it's coming by. And it's so interesting and unique and challenging. And I really loved understanding the movement of their cameras, and how sophisticated the setups were. I've never seen setups that um, like wild to me, you know, like camera setups where the camera is like way over there and it's going to fly basically across like the length of a football field, and then it's going to like come swooping down into the bleachers, and then it's like it's crazy. It's really it's to see that level of camera work. it's almost like these cameras are drones, but they're not drones. They're cameras with rigs that are, you touch the rig like just like this, and the entire rig lifts. Like gorgeous, gorgeous camera setups. And I love cameras. So I think that for me was really so much fun, like I just to see that and to know that and to try to step up to that and participate is just like, wow, to work with the state of the art technology, the state of the art. And the art is in a really cool place. So it's really like crazy. It's wonderful, you
Yeah.
know.
Uh, your character has been left out of series five. Will you be still be watching the season five though?
I will. Yes, I will. I definitely will. I'm going to. Of course, I'm going to watch it. Yeah, I know these people. I root for these people. I'm a fan. I'm like their fan. Yes.
Do you know how it? Obviously, you can't share, but do you know how it's going to play out?
I think it's going to play out and I think it could be potentially one of the most exciting seasons of all. That's my feeling is that I think potentially, and they usually realize their potential. This is a group of people that realizes their potential. Um, I'm pretty sure it's going to be one of the most exciting seasons of all five. And that's everybody has an opinion about that, right? But that's my opinion. So I don't know when it's going to land or anything. So, but
Uh, Another role you're well known for that people love is your role in Orange is the New Black.
yeah,
Is it true that character was only meant to be in one episode?
I was hired for one day. I was hired for one episode one day, and I think that that's something that I really would like other actors to know is that don't judge it. Like, don't judge the job, right? Just go with a full heart and have a great day. And because 40 episodes later, you might still be there. You know what I mean? And many raises later, they were very generous. And um, I feel like, you know, I've always been fascinated by the fact that we incarcerate so many people. And I've always felt really strongly about that. In the US alone, we incarcerate more people than any other first world nation. We incarcerate more women. I think we are up to 5% of our population. We incarcerate 5%. I believe that's the number. I could be wrong of our population. It could be even higher. We are about to do some horrifying roundup of the immigrants that have come to this country to seek a better life. Incarcerating people, yes, obviously there are people in this world, heinous murderers and rapists and villains and fraudsters and, you know, um, people who have, stolen way too much from others. And yes, there does need to be some sense of prison and incarceration. But I do believe in reformative justice. And I'm not sure that prison is the way to go. And I'm not sure that we are not wasting the greatest of all resources we have on this planet, which is humans. And I wonder of those 5%, who is sitting there in a 2x4 cell, who, if given the right opportunity and education, could not be an incredible support to the forward motion of all of us on this planet. And just, is this the way to go? And so, I felt very strongly about incarceration for a long time. When I was younger, my dream was to actually teach in prisons, teach drama, which I hope one day to do. But I think that having met many people who have been through the prison system, a lot of people make mistakes, and some mistakes, I think your whole life shouldn't be ruined because of that mistake. And I'm not talking about murder, not talking about rape. I'm not talking about the horrible things, the Bernie Madoffs who steal everything from everybody. I'm not talking about that. But there's a lot of middle ground there. And I think if we put more money into education than we put into, keeping people in prison, which is so expensive to society, if we actually put that money into preschool and into education, I think we'd have less prisoners. I think we'd have less people making really big mistakes. And, you know, um, so my first day as Wanda Bell on Orange is the New Black, when I got there, I felt very strongly about being there. And I was really jazzed to be there. I was very turned on by it. And the set design was impeccable. The costume design was impeccable. I thought the scripts were really charged. And, when I got the script, I thought, wow, Wanda Bell is jealous. She is a jealous, bitter woman for whom, life has not served her well. And that's what I'm going to go for. And that, I think they saw that, and they saw that I had a need to be there as a soul in the storytelling operation. And I think that attracted them. I think that's why I was there again and again and again. And it was a great learning experience. And it was a great artistic experience. And I'm very proud to be part of a show where nobody thought a television show about a woman's prison would be of interest to anyone. And it's become this, it's iconographic. It's become an iconographic show in the canon of human television. And it's about a woman's prison, right? Isn't that cool? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
we out here, all of us out here, we want the truth. We want the real stories. We are interested in each other, you know? So not everybody is just interested in the lives of the rich and famous. We want the human dimension. We want the human stories. And most of us, there but for the grace of God go I. A lot of us have come and understand that, people in prison, that's a hard break. And not everybody is a hardened criminal, you know?
It's based on a novel, isn't it? So did you meet the writer of the
Yeah,
novel?
I
Have you
did. I did meet her. And she was really an interesting woman. And she'd made a mistake. She was this woman who was incredibly privileged, had everything that you could ever want or desire as a child growing up. I mean, maybe she did come from a kind of puritanical home. Um, however you want to cast that. But uh, you know, she was stupid. She did something really freaking stupid and she paid for it. And I met her and I thought it was fascinating. And I loved that this woman she saw that refraction and she wrote about it. And I think that is so cool, so unique. And talk about turning lemons into lemonade, right?
Yeah.
Talk about turning your life around. Talk about not accepting defeat in life, but talk about the phoenix rising from the fire. She created the book that spun off one of the most challenging and interesting and beloved TV shows of our time. And I'm sure the day that she was sent to prison, she was not thinking, oh my gosh, I can turn this into a positive. So that is such a lesson. And, I was really proud to meet her.
Have you got any favorite stories or experiences on the set of that show?
They had amazing crafty. I have to tell you that the food on that show, like the first year, I think I'm not exaggerating. I think a lot of us gained like 10 pounds. The food was like, it was just unreal. Like, there's like shrimp ceviche at the 11 o'clock meal. There's like filet mignon, there's like lobster, there's like, it was like unreal. The food was just unreal. And I was constantly wandering over to the craft table being like, oh, well, okay. And I would get home at night and my husband would be like, do you want dinner? I'd be like, no, not hungry. you know and I do remember there was a wonderful director on that show named Gus, and I had a scene with Joel Garland. And I think Joel and I, maybe not to speak for him, but I think we thought the scene was about like maybe these two guards were in trouble and things were going down and this was not looking good. I think that's what we thought. And this director, this fabulous director, came up to us, Gus, and he goes, touch his elbow on this line. And I was like, okay, sure, I can do that. I got you touching his elbow on that line. And I did it. And it turned it from this scene where we both were terrified of like whatever was coming down the pike. It turned it from that, and it turned it into like, oh, dude, I really like you. Who cares if we're in trouble? And it turned it into like this little romantic scene. And that was the beginning of this like little romance between these two characters. And I think this director, I went over to Crafty after we shot that, wandered over to Craft Services. He's standing there and I said, why did you think to give that direction? How did you give that brilliant direction? And he said, I wouldn't have known to before, but watching you guys, I thought, oh, the scene is not about two guards in trouble. The scene is about two guards in trouble who figure out they really like each other, And so it just completely shifted the scene, shifted the dynamic, shifted the like focus, shifted the joy factor, shifted the FU factor toward the administration that you thought you were in trouble with. Like everything shifted. And that was put your hand on his elbow. That's the only direction that was given, and it shifted an entire scene. That's genius, right? Takes 2 seconds to give that direction, creates an entire shift in an episode, and it does so with like no time, no effort, and it's complete perfection. That is perfect direction. And I think there were people on that show and on many of the shows that I've gotten a chance to work on that are able to do that with just a word or a phrase, completely shift the globe, completely change the volcanic eruption. Amazing.
That's the great
Amazing.
thing about art, though, isn't it? Like, someone's
Yeah.
perception can change things, and everybody's
Yes.
perception's different.
Yes. And you might go in, you might wander in thinking it's A, and it's not A at all. It's not. It's Q. And nobody knew it was Q. This morning, nobody walking onto that set would have thought that we're filming Q. Nobody would have thought that. And then once it's filmed, it's like, oh my gosh, that's what happened. So, and the high of that understanding is life-giving. And I think for me, it stays with me forever. Like forever, I will remember that day. Forever.
And also, when you as an actress will be learning from these people as well, won't you, for future
Yeah.
roles?
Yeah. 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 And I think, leading with a yes heart. I think that's something that a writer told me years ago, and she was so right. Like just say yes. Yes to anything that comes at you. I mean, maybe not a nuclear bomb, but like to anything that comes at you, like say yes. Find the yes. And I think that that's really has been enormously helpful, because instead of being like, oh, well, why should I put my hand on his arm? Like, I don't feel like instead of kvetching, just do it and see where it takes you. Just fall forward, fall into the yes, you know?
Well, I want to talk about your role in Mindhunter as Ruth Barnwright, um,
Oh,
who is a real life person.
yeah.
You've also played Janis Joplin in a
Yes.
funeral. So, do you approach these roles differently when they're real people?
I approach them with an enormous amount of respect and humility because, I mean, Janis Joplin was one of the most beloved and is one of the most beloved people of all of our lives. And a woman who gave so much and was arguably so tortured, right? And had such she didn't have um the backup, the tools, the team structure, the support network that maybe a lot of hopefully people today in her position might have, like I think, a lot of the big stars today, they've got teams that protect them, that talk to them, that understand the special situation. And I don't think she had that. And I think, had it been, had Janice lived 10 years later, she would still be alive. But she was on the cusp. She was the very forefront. She was breaking so many glass ceilings. She was just shattering glass ceiling after glass ceilings. And that's a lonely, difficult position in which to be in, no matter how brilliant you are. And so playing her for me was a very empathetic, sympathetic. Um, I loved Janice. I loved Janice. And um, the last moment of that play, Love Janice, it's called. It was off Broadway in New York. Um, there was also a Broadway show, but they're two so very different. But the one that I was in was called Love Janice, which is brilliant. And the West End should bring it. The West End should bring the show. I am too old now to play the role, but there are many younger women who could, eat it up, tear it up. But um, it's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant piece of theater. And the last moment I found to be, you know, Janice is sitting there with all of her feathers and her big glasses, and little girl Blue is playing. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house, including my own, every night. And so I think it was a very powerful, healing um, piece to be in. And um, I'm grateful that Janis Joplin saw fit to, have me around, um, impersonating her, which I don't think anybody could do. It wasn't an impersonation, it was an interpretation. So, and on Mindhunter, I remember that very well. And we shot it in Pittsburgh. And for anybody who is looking to shoot in an area that you could be in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s in America, like it went through a really hard time recession wise. And so development stopped. And all you need to do to shoot in that area is bring in the period cars that match the time period you want to shoot in. The streets of Pittsburgh, there are streets that are just that it's like Albany. And I'm sure there are towns like this in the UK where time stopped, where at some point time just stopped. And you could be on certain blocks and you wouldn't know what year it was, except for the cars on the street, right? And that's Pittsburgh in certain areas. And it's a really cool place to shoot. And it was, I thought it was a fascinating episode, a fascinating shoot. Um, the mother-son relationship and the mother-child relationship, it's so fraught. with pain and suffering, and especially in that episode and in that storyline. Um, and I think that one always wonders, there's a victim, but and there's a heinous crime, and there's terrible things that happen, but there are the people behind the scenes, the mothers, the fathers, the aunts, the uncles, the sisters, the brothers, and I'm always curious about them. And I'm glad, I think Mindhunter really explored that dynamic a little bit. And I was really grateful for that, you know, to have a chance to think about that and have that conversation opened. Because it's a big conversation, and we never talk to the survivors. We never talk to the brother of the guy who did the bad stuff, you know, like, how does he feel walking down the street? And I think that show in particular really tried to get into the psychology of the criminal mind from a much more intimate familial point of view. And I thought that was really interesting, really dynamic, just
Yeah,
personally.
yeah, definitely, yeah. You mentioned before you'll take a job as long as you like the person, the nice people. Does does playing different roles keep it exciting for you?
Yeah.
Different versatile roles.
Yeah. I'm a character actor, and I love to play different people. Like, I don't want to do the same thing every day. I I don't want to play the same character. I don't want to play the same part. Like, I don't know. I guess that's why I've never gotten one of those shows where, somebody just plays the same part for 8 years. Like, even on Orange is the New Black, like, that character went through a lot of growth. That character went through a lot of changes. That character was constantly being assaulted by new information. And I feel like I love that. And I love being, I'm a gypsy. I love traveling from thing to thing, finding new stuff, knowing new roles, working with new creatives. On Saturday night, the SNL film, that is out now, shooting that with Jason Reitman and everybody, it was so fascinating because that's one of the meanest characters I've ever played. And I was like, oh, wow, this woman is so mean. It hurts. I am in pain. Like, I have to go home and watch a Disney show. I mean, it was just, and that's interesting, right? It's information, right? The heart is responding. And I like to have, I like a heart attack. I like a character to give me, like, what is your heart? And whoa, that's a panic where we're going. I think that's so interesting. I love it. You know, I live for it. I need it. I need to interpret other people. I need to live through story. I live through stories. This piece I'm about to do, if anybody's in New York, the 26th, 27th, 28th, 29th of December, in a couple of weeks, I'm doing a piece called Pen Pals. And it's about a woman in the UK, in Leeds, who a woman in Newark, New Jersey, they wrote to each other. I believe it's a true story. They wrote to each other for 50 years and never met. And then the last page, well, I shouldn't tell you, but they do meet. And it's a 50-year relationship of two pen pals. And it's so fascinating because it's these two women who find each other as 14-year-olds. And it's a very pure form of a communication, because there's never been a kiss hello, there's never been a handshake, there's never been a cup of tea. It's just what I have to put down on paper right now to another human being who I get cares about me, who's never met me. It's like how you tell your secrets to a bartender. It's an amazing piece of theater. So anybody who's in New York and wants something to do after Christmas Day, come. It's totally cool. And I was fascinated by the script. I read through the whole script, and every single time I'm in tears at the end, at the last page, every single time, because it's just so provocative to me, um, from a point of view of its humanity, you know?
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've got to ask you about this film because it's one of my favorite films. What was it like working with Martin Scorsese on The Wolf of Wall Street?
Well, I don't know. What is it like working with a genius, right? I mean, like he's a genius and I think he knows it, but he was very, very kind. And I mean, I just had a tiny part in it. But I was playing FBI and they had real FBI agents come to the set and advise us, just talk to us like, how does, where in a room full of people, where would the FBI agent be standing? Right? Where would they be standing? And in an arrest, how would an FBI person, not a police officer, but FBI, you know, get somebody to go along with them into the car and go to the station house without them knowing or feeling that they're being arrested, right? Because if somebody's being arrested and they lawyer up and they've been read their rights, they've been read the Miranda, they have the right to clam up. And so with FBI and with any operation like that, if somebody's hasn't yet been like formally charged, it's a great time to just be like, how's it going? What's going on? Want to say anything? And that's what Martin Scorsese said to me. He was so smart. He goes, your job as FBI is to get this person to just happy go luckily wander over to the car and get in, not to resist, not to have a problem with it, not to ask questions. And he's like, so your job as FBI is to agree to everything they're saying and just listen in case they say something really incriminating, And I thought that was so great. I was like, and he's like, you just agree to everything that this criminal says to you so that they keep walking. Just keep the person walking. And I loved that. And I thought it was so smart. And that was my direction from Martin Scorsese. And I thought it was just genius. And he was really kind and lovely and very generous, very gentle, very good person.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
definitely a genius. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Wow. Cinematic genius.
yeah, yeah. You're a massive fan and advocate of indie films. How important are they to you and the film business in general?
I think indie films are the NPR, the Channel 13, the BBC. I think indie films are the voice of the people. And I think if we do not have independent storytellers that are not corporate based, that are not based in a group thought of what this should go down, of how this should happen, of how this, story by committee, unless we have independent auteur voyeurs who are finding a pathway to tell their story through a channel that maybe we've never seen before, no one's ever thought of before. Unless we have that, how do we go forward? Unless we have innovation, unless we have new ideas, unless we have a new way of teaching each other, being in each other's stories, having stories told, if it's just the corporate ideology, if it's just the corporate think, if it's just the team think, if it's just the story by committee, then how do we advance the voice of the individual, the voice of the individual artist? Incredibly important to protect, incredibly important to push forward. And I believe everyone out there who feels like it should adopt an indie film and help it to get on its journey because it's incredibly difficult. Indie filmmakers, there's not a lot of funding for the arts in the US at all. And indie filmmakers, they're making their films with like, wing and a prayer. There's a indie film I shot this past summer, Almost Grace. Um, Amazing cast, amazing cast. Josephine Decker, who did Madeline, My Madeline, um, just brilliant people, brilliant, brilliant people. Uh, this film is having a hard time finding finishing funds, and it's a brilliant film, and it's a film that I think everybody would love. You know, uh, so I think it would touch the hearts and minds and souls of so many people. And I loved that script more than I've loved almost any script I've ever read. I loved the shoot. I loved shooting with these people. And, we shot really rough style on the streets of New York. I don't know how many permits we really had for anything. But doesn't really seem to bother New York, which is one of the reasons I do rather love New York. We shot in the subway. We shot a very dramatic scene in the subway, and a long scene, like 3 pages. And we shot out by Coney Island. I don't know if it was the D. I don't know which train it was, and I don't know which one it was. And it was a packed train because it's a commuter train. And we shot in the evening because we needed the lights to be dark. And this subway car full of New Yorkers, when we were shooting, got very quiet. When the sound guy had to get somebody to move so we could get in there to put the boom in to get better sound, he was like, "I'm so sorry. Can I just step over there?" This New York subway rider was like, "Oh, no, I'm so sorry. Let me get out of your way. You're shooting." They were like, "Do you need any extras? We'll be in your shot." You know, we went from stop to stop to stop. Every time new people would get on, other people on the train were like, "They're shooting." And after we shot for, I think, really like, I don't know, a little bit, these New Yorkers, the people on the subway train, applauded. They had no reason. They weren't, they, none of us will ever see each other again. And it is one of the things that I love about New York is that people here, I mean, by and large, love the arts. And the ordinary commuter going home on a Thursday night, if you're shooting in their subway car, a very dramatic scene, it's about a mom and 2 daughters, very dramatic scene. They're like locked in. It's like the people in London, you know what I mean? Like when somebody is playing music on the street, everybody huddles around, you know? I think I think that's the beauty of the urban landscape and the arts is the arts can sneak its way in to shoot for free on the subway and just, I know the MTA might be listening, but it's $30,000 to shoot for 4 hours in a New York City subway. And, what indie film can afford that? And New Yorkers just don't seem to mind if you take over, one end of a subway car for a while and do your drama. So it doesn't seem to bother New Yorkers at all.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. I wonder if we did it in England, how they'd react. I think some parts of England would react a bit differently. Some would appreciate it, well, some would act differently, I think.
But it was also a great scene. It was a scene between a mother and her daughters. And, I think people felt the honesty of the art. And I think that is the job of art. And I think that that is the glory of art is that people need it. People want it. And I think indie film really answers the call of the truest, purest, simplest form of storytelling. Low budget, guerrilla filmmaking. It's just the story because, we don't have cameras flying. We just have the story and we just have the actors. And that's something that will forever be undeniable. The truth of that.
I hope that film does get the funding it needs and it
Yeah,
does
yeah,
well.
yeah. Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. It's brilliant. I hope so.
So you mentioned before the Saturday Night Live film. I've seen the trailer for it. It looks brilliant. Is there any other things you've got coming up or that are going to be released soon or anything?
I think I had about four indie films that I shot in the last year that I don't know, they should be around at some point soon. I don't actually keep up with everything because I'm kind of, working on scripts and stuff. But definitely I've got some indie stuff coming out. Um, I really would have liked that TV show that was shooting in Manchester, but I didn't get that. So if they want to come around again, I'm here. And you know, I don't know. I hope I get some more TV soon. And I'm shooting another indie in a few months. And I'm writing a screenplay that I'm really excited about. And uh, like that. I mean, I'm just tootling along in my little New York artsy fartsy self, I mean, like that's like that's a strange, alternative existence which I live. That's, me and
Just to finish off, really, what advice would you give to up and coming actors and actresses?
I would say, first of all, I would say if you could do anything else, you should. That would be the first thing I'd say. The second thing I'd say is, screw your courage to the sticking place. It is a rough ride and it is a very hard career. And I'd say if you do decide this is for you, then live the yes and go where you are wanted and don't worry about where you're not wanted. And that was the best advice I ever got from a friend who was like, okay, so the jobs that you didn't get, the jobs that rejected you, they rejected you. Don't worry about them. They're not worrying about you. The jobs that want you, the jobs that you got, those are the ones to focus on because that's where you're wanted. Go where you're wanted and embrace where you're wanted and love where you're wanted and work as hard as you can to be a player, a participant, a team player in that channel, in that zone, on that path. That's what I would say. And don't be afraid. Don't just keep getting up and brushing yourself off and go again and go again and go again and go again.
Yeah,
Don't. The word no is not like, okay, maybe you don't want to eat that third piece of cake. Otherwise, the word no, not useful.
yeah, that's brilliant advice. Totally agree with you there. Um,
Right?
yeah, definitely. I know you're a big, obviously, as an actress, you're a big fan of film and TV, and I know you like watching television. Is there any favourites for you at the moment that you're
Oh,
watching?
well, I mean, my gosh, the penguin. Have you guys seen
I've
that?
not seen it, but I've heard it's good.
Oh, wow, it's genius. I mean, it is genius. Colin Farrell is unrecognizable.
Yeah, so yeah,
He's unrecognizable. He has to win. He just has to win. I mean, if he doesn't win, I'm going to be, and Dee Dee O'Connell as his mother. She's a brilliant theater actress in New York. Brilliant, brilliant theater actress in New York. She's considered to be one of our greatest actresses. And her performance in that, no one in the world would have done it like that. It's genius. She is a genius. I think the entire cast is genius. It's truly it's wonderful. My Brilliant Friend, I just started watching that. I love it. Um, The Man on the Inside, so fun. I loved it. Um, I watch so much stuff, and my problem, sadly, is that I'll start watching something at like 7 o'clock at night, and then at 7 a.m., I'll be like, wow, that was a great night. Like I binge everything. So it's problematic because then half the time I'm like, what? I saw that series. I saw that whole series 2 weeks ago, you know? So yeah, there's so much good stuff out there. The Brutalist, film wise, the end is genius, but don't go to see it alone because it is truly Michael Shannon and Tilda Swinton. Oh, uh, I mean, I bowed to those performances. Um, there's just, My Three Sisters. I just saw that. Um, there's so much good stuff out there. There's so much good art. We are living in a time where we are really literally, excuse the expression, but we are pigs in shit. I mean, we have so much great art. There, maybe there's so much that is really challenging in the world today, really hard, um, really upsetting. Really, people are struggling. But one of the ways forward, one of the things that all of humanity right now has is, I think, collectively, from many countries, from many, many places, human beings are in a time of artistic explosion. And there is so much great art right now. Internationally, there's so much great art. You know, I watch a lot of international stuff. I'm just blanking off the top of my head, but I watch a lot of it, and I try to watch everything I can. And we are in an explosion of human creativity. Of There is something for everyone, and I believe right now artists are leading the way as some of the finest engineers of our forward movement as human beings, and maybe we haven't reached Mars, and, maybe we're not saving the planet, but I think that we are helping people to move forward through their lives because I do believe in the healing power of art. I do believe that art humanizes. I do believe that art communicates. I do believe that art is for all. And I do believe that art is one of the greatest pulses that that enables the human heart to fall forward,
That's
you
why it's
know.
such a shame that like you say, the indie film industry is so badly funded because art is important to people, isn't it? And it's like an escapism for people,
Yeah,
like you say, from the real world, really.
but people need to escape.
Yeah.
They need to be able to feel and think and breathe and laugh. I remember I had this really bad day once. I don't know why it was so bad. I have no clue. And that's not really what I remember. And that's not what's important. But I remember I had this horrible day and I went back to my hotel room and I don't watch Friends. Like, I don't know. That's not my first go to show. There's so many shows, but it's a wonderful show. And I turned on an episode of Friends and I was so sad and I was so blue. And I just sat there and watched it and I laughed and I laughed. And then, you know, after I turned it off, I was like, oh, okay, okay, okay. I think I'll go get some food now. Like I was okay. It brought me back. It lifted me. I rose again, the Lazarus of my heart rose again because art teaches us that we matter. And I know there's so much tragedy in the world right now. And that could lead one to think that life is not precious. But art teaches us that each of us is precious. And art is a way forward. And it doesn't matter what your religion is. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what your upbringing is. It doesn't matter how much money you have in the bank. It doesn't matter, you know, none of those things matter. Art is for all. And all art does is go to the human spirit, the human heart, the human soul, the human psyche. And it is a unifier. And we are all so much more unified and alike than we are different. And that is one of the great things that art teaches us. And I think art, hopefully, is a light in the darkness, on the way forward, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've really enjoyed that. It's been a brilliant interview with you, Catherine, and thank you for giving me the time to speak to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And I'm telling you, if I get to go up for that show in Manchester again, I'm gonna need your accent. So I'm coming to you to record that accent. I love the accent of the North. It's so fabulous.
Yeah,
It's just
A
yeah.
Yorkshire accent I've got, but yeah, Manchester, it's not far from Leeds, really. So yeah, hopefully you do get that role in the future.
Well, whatever, you know, whatever
Well,
comes.
like you say, concentrate on the ones you've got and forget about the ones you didn't get.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But anyway, well, thank you so much. I've truly enjoyed it, and I thank you so much for listening to me babble on. So I'm
No,
grateful.
it's been brilliant. I've enjoyed hearing all your stories and your advice and everything. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, bye,
Bye.
bye,
Bye.
bye, bye.